Everyone trains glutes for how they look. That's a valid reason, but it's a cosmetic reason, and it completely misses what's actually happening metabolically when you load this muscle group. The glutes are not just a muscle, they're a glucose sink, a myokine factory, and hormonal signal, and most people are leaving all of that on the table. Skeletal muscle accounts for roughly 80% of insulin-mediated glucose disposal. That's the baseline, but here is what makes the glutes specifically relevant. During contraction, muscle fibers translocate GLUT4 transporters to the cell membrane independently of insulin. This is the key mechanism. You don't need insulin to clear glucose from the bloodstream when muscle is contracting. The mechanical and metabolic stimulus of the contraction itself drives GLUT4 to the surface. And because the gluteus maximus is the single largest muscle in the human body, the surface area for that transport is enormous. What this means in the practice: every time you load the glutes under tension, you're creating a glucose disposal event that bypasses the insulin pathway entirely. That's directly relevant for anyone dealing with insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, or just poor glycemic control. Contracting muscle doesn't just burn fuel, it signals. Skeletal muscle release proteins called myokines during exercise. A heavy compound loading of large muscle groups amplifies this effect. Two matter here. First, irisin, released primarily from type 2 fibers, the fast-twitch fibers that glutes are rich in. Irisin promotes the browning of white adipose tissue. That means converting metabolically inert fat cells into cells that can actually burn energy. It also improves insulin sensitivity and has direct effects on bone metabolism. Second, IL-6, interleukin 6 from contracting muscle, not the inflammatory IL-6 from chronic stress, acts as a fuel sensor. It stimulates hepatic glucose output when muscle glycogen is low, promotes fat oxidation, and suppresses appetite by hypothalamic signaling. This is exercise-induced IL-6 is not the same molecule as inflammatory IL-6, and conflating the two is a common mistake. Heavy loading of large muscle groups, squats, hip thrusts, Romanian deadlifts, drives the most significant acute hormonal response you can generate in a training session. Growth hormone pulses from the anterior pituitary. Local IGF-1 synthesis in muscle tissue increases. Testosterone responds acutely to a high mechanical tension and metabolic stress. These are transient responses. They don't replace sleep-based growth hormone secretion or endogenous testosterone production. But they're real, they're measurable, and they accumulate over time into meaningful adaptations, and they don't happen the same way with isolation movements or low-load training. There's one more layer. Adipose tissue is not metabolically uniform. The fat stored in the gluteal and femoral region, subcutaneous, below the waist, has a fundamentally different hormonal profile than visceral fat. Gluteal adipose tissue has lower lipolytic activity, higher adiponectin output, and lower inflammatory cytokine release compared to visceral depots. Adiponectin improves insulin sensitivity and has anti-inflammatory effects. This is why a higher gluteal fat to visceral fat ratio is actually associated with better metabolic outcomes, not worse. The clinical implication: body composition assessment focused only on total fat percentage misses this entirely. Where the fat sits matters as much as how much there is. What actually activates this? Volume and mechanical tension. You need enough load to recreate type 2 fibers. That's the threshold where GLUT4 translocation, irisin release, and the growth hormone response become significant. Body weight work doesn't get you there. Light resistance doesn't get you there. Hip thrusts, barbell squats, and Romanian deadlifts, for example, under progressive overload. Full range of motion, consistent loading over time. That's the input. The metabolic output, glucose disposal, myokine signaling, hormonal response follows. If you're dealing with insulin resistant, poor glycemic control, or a hormonal environment that isn't responding to diet alone, this is one of the most underused levers you have, and it doesn't require any supplement, any protocol, or any product. Just load.